Hi, my name's Eric. I'll be reading you selections from the e-edition of today's Cape Cod Times. Today's date is Monday, April 6th of 2026. We'll start with the weather, as we always do, and across the Cape and Islands today, fairly nice day, times of clouds and sun throughout the day, high of 51 expected. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low of 36 in the overnight. On Tuesday, cloudy with a brief shower or two, high of 47, a low of 31 in the overnight. On Wednesday, very cold, with plenty of sun for this time of year, high of 40, a low of 33 in the overnight. Thursday, periods of clouds and sunshine, high of 51, low of 44. And on Friday, intervals of clouds and sun, a high of 61 and a low of 45. And looking ahead, it does look like Friday is the harbinger of a very nice week next week, when temperatures should be more in the 60s than the 40s and 50s. So we have something to look forward to. But today's a nice day. Might have a little rain tomorrow, and then the rest of the week's a little chilly but sunny. The sun will rise at 6:16 a.m. today. It'll set at 7:12 p.m. We'll have 12 hours and 56 minutes of daylight. The moon will rise and set at 8:11 a.m. Heading to the front of the paper, where they used to keep the lottery results. And we read these lottery results because, well, somebody asked for them. If there's something you would like read to people who are blind or print disabled, you can email us at info@audiblelocalledger.org or call us at 508-539-2030. That's 508-539-2030. And if you miss any of the information we share in our readings, you can always go to audiblelocalledger.org. Click on the Listen tab. It's a fully disability-compliant website. And at All Reads to the Blind, you can find 150 of our readings in chronological order, so the most recent would be at the top. That would allow you to catch up on anything you might have missed. All of that's free for people who are blind or print disabled at audiblelocalledger.org. Heading to the masslottery.com website, because the Cape Cod Times goes to press too early to give you those latest numbers, and if you ask for them, you deserve them. For the numbers game of Sunday, April 5th, in the midday drawing, the results were 7, 8, 5, 6. Again, the midday drawing yesterday, 7, 8, 5, 6. For the numbers game evening drawing yesterday, Sunday, April 5th, 9, 1, 1, 0. Again, 9, 1, 1, 0. Good luck to all who play. Remember us if you win. From the cover, the headline reads, Cold-Blooded. Man sentenced after murder conviction in 2023 Falmouth slaying, by Zane Razak. In Barnstable, the mother of Miltier Zaven Hendricks, 19, of Falmouth, said her son was the kindest, most gentle young man with so much more living to do. At the sentencing hearing Friday in Barnstable Superior Court of Adrian Black, convicted of killing Hendricks, his family told Judge Elaine Buckley how his death had devastated them. Miltier is loved deeply by everyone who knew him, and losing him has been devastating, said Nicole Sidney, speaking on behalf of Hendricks' mother, Rachel Lopes. We miss his smile and his sense of humor. Knowing you will spend the rest of your life in jail gives me some solace, but the pain you've caused us all is a true life sentence. Buckley told family members that there was nothing she could say to ease your pain on the death of a 19-year-old man. I thank you so much for what you've told me about Milt. He was clearly a beloved member of your family, a son, a brother, a cousin, a godson, a grandchild. Your loss is tremendous, and there's nothing I can say that will make it any lighter, she said. It's my wish for you all that today's proceeding and the verdict yesterday, the sentencing today, will give you peace. Buckley sentenced Black to life in prison without parole, the state's mandatory sentence. On Thursday afternoon, a jury found Black guilty of first-degree murder, concluding that the killing was pre-planned and carried out with extreme atrocity. They deliberated for about 2 hours before reaching a verdict. Prosecutors say Black stabbed Hendricks, who was 19, twice around 4:45 p.m. on June 10, 2023, during a confrontation at the Gosnold Grove apartment complex. Black was 22 when arrested in 2023. Hendricks was taken by ambulance to Falmouth Hospital before being flown by helicopter to Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, where he later died of his injuries, including a wound that penetrated his heart. The fight stemmed from insults that Hendricks directed at Black's friend, Armando Gomes, according to authorities. Gomes, who prosecutors say threw the first punch that day, is expected to be tried separately for the killing in June. Black did not initially know Hendricks. During his closing argument, Cape and Islands Assistant District Attorney Thomas Flanagan Jr. said that surveillance footage and cell phone videos show what began as a fistfight. He said Black can be seen on the periphery before he enters the altercation when Hendricks is distracted to stab him twice. This was not just a tragedy like a lightning strike or a natural disaster, said Flanagan. I suggest to you what the evidence shows in this case is that this defendant and Armando Gomes, what they did to Miltyr Hendricks was a cold-blooded, planned, and deliberately premeditated murder, and nothing less than that. Multiple witnesses identified Black as the person seen in the footage wearing a dark-colored sweatshirt, said Flanagan. A cell phone was also recovered at the scene that investigators traced back to Black, he said. Flanagan also pointed to Black's text messages, such as threats sent to Hendricks, as evidence of murderous intent and consciousness of guilt. In one message, Black wondered if he should cut his hair, which Flanagan argued showed concern about being identified. Black's defense attorney, John Geary, said the fight was fast-moving and hectic, saying that chaos and pandemonium reigned in the Gosnold Grove complex. He argued the intent was for a fistfight and not a premeditated act of violence. During the trial, the slang term fade was defined as a physical fight. There is no premeditation for this. This was a fade, a fight. And then you see what happened. It accelerated, said Geary. Geary highlighted the lack of forensic evidence linking Black to the crime, including no usable fingerprints recovered from key vehicle and potential weapons and tools in the car that were tested but not connected to the crime. He also reminded the jury that key witnesses testified after being granted immunity. Weigh the credibility of the people who testified before you. They came in to tell you the truth, and some of them did that under a grant of immunity. You use your own common sense and your collective collaboration to determine what is credible, said Geary. Very few local stories in this half-hour reading of the Cape Cod Times. There's only 3, really. New England governors commit to exploring nuclear energy by Margie Cullen. In a time of peak partisan polarization, Democratic and Republican governors in New England have been able to agree on one thing: exploring nuclear energy options. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey, Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont, Maine Governor Janet Mills, New Hampshire Governor Kelly Ayotte, Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee, and Vermont Governor Phil Scott issued a joint statement on Tuesday, March 31st, saying they would be exploring advanced nuclear energy technology, including locations for new nuclear facilities to strengthen the region's energy reliability, affordability, and long-term supply. Healey, Lamont, Mills, and McKee are Democrats, while Ayotte and Scott are Republicans. Despite their different political parties, governors said in a statement, New England has a tradition of collaborating on regional energy matters. Adequate electricity supply is critical to growing our economies, preserving public health and safety, powering our homes and businesses, and stabilizing consumer prices as demand for electricity rises across the region, the governors said. As governors, we're committed to safeguarding our collective energy future through advancement of a diverse energy strategy that includes nuclear power, a pillar of New England's electric system. The governors are looking to both ensure the continuation of existing nuclear generation facilities in New England, as well as find new sites for nuclear facilities in states and communities that express a willingness to host such resources. New England currently has only a couple of nuclear facilities, including Seabrook Station in New Hampshire and Dominion Millstone Power Station in Connecticut. The governors say that these steps are necessary to complement our state's other efforts to secure a safe, affordable, and reliable electricity grid for the 21st century. Electricity consumption in New England is expected to increase by over 40% in the next 20 years, according to the press release, and winter peak demand is projected to double by 2045. By ensuring both the continued operation of our existing nuclear fleet and setting our region on a path to explore next-generation resources, including advanced nuclear energy technologies, the New England states will continue our leadership in grid modernization and energy innovation as we jointly work to meet the region's current and future energy needs, the governor said in the joint press release. Many of the governors have already been working toward advancing nuclear power as they work to bring down the cost of electricity. AOT issued an executive order on March 26th directing the New Hampshire Department of Energy to advance nuclear power in the state. And Massachusetts has a partnership with UMass at Lowell to develop advanced nuclear and fusion energy roadmaps. We need to keep working to bring affordable, reliable energy to our entire region in order to lower Granite Staters' electric bills, AOT said in a press release. As New Hampshire lays the groundwork for next-generation nuclear power in our state, I am glad to join fellow New England governors in supporting the development of this pivotal technology across our region. The governors say they'll put nuclear facilities only in communities that are willing to host them. In their statement, they said they are committed to ensuring local voices shape decision-making from the outset. They said that they will use community-led approaches to find appropriate, responsible locations for new nuclear development and pay careful attention to concerns around things like safety, cost, and the disposal of nuclear waste. The other story in the Cape and Islands, discussion in Falmouth of immigrant experience planned April 25th by Rachel Devaney. A member of the Falmouth Immigrant Rights Coalition will lead a discussion following the screening of 2 Oscar-nominated short films to reflect on American immigrant executive orders and policies. The goal is for the audience to get a sense of the struggle immigrants are now facing with all these new laws, policies, and executive orders surrounding immigration, said Coalition co-founder Sandra Feynman Silva in a phone interview with The Times on Wednesday. Every day there's a new set of rules, and many people believe that the driving source behind those rules is racism. Feynman Silva believes the film screening held at 4 p.m. April 25th at the Wacoit Congregational Church will feature Alien and Stranger at the Gate, which can help people understand the struggles immigrants face in the United States. Those are movie titles. Both films are part of a Movies That Matter series, which focuses on films that address significant social issues, according to a press release from the Massachusetts Cultural Council and the Falmouth Cultural Council. What are the films about? Alien, that's A-L-I-E-N, portrays real-life immigration enforcement practices, particularly the detention of undocumented individuals during official proceedings, according to the film's website. That movie was released in January of 2023. Stranger at the Gate explores the unexpected turn of events when a U.S. Marine plans a terrorist attack and is welcomed by the community he targets, and that film was released 2022. Watching these films can help us reflect on what does it mean to be a citizen or a resident in the U.S., said Feynman Silva. I hope the films can help people have hard conversations around the context that can be viewed in these movies. The film's screening is free. What is the Falmouth Immigrant Rights Coalition? Feynman Silva said the organization was created in 2024 following President Donald Trump's election. There was so much hate and angst toward immigrants, we knew we had to do something, said Feynman Silva. And since then, the group has gathered roughly 500 members. Obviously, the group's sentiment is strong, she said. There are 3 obituaries in today's Cape Cod Times. The first is of Ian S. Crow of Darien, Connecticut, beloved husband of Yvonne Ruth Crow, who passed at Norwalk Hospital November 12th, 2025, with his devoted wife and a family friend by his side. The cause of death was double pneumonia. Ian's greatest joy was spending time with his family, especially his two young grandsons, Ash and Sawyer. Funeral arrangements were made under the direction of Trinity Cremation Services in Stamford. A celebration of Ian's life will be held at a later date. The other obituaries of Mary Ann McParland of Hyannis, who at the age of 56 passed peacefully at home surrounded by her loving family on April 1st. She was born May 18, 1969 in Framingham, and was a beloved, devoted, cherished, and kind-hearted woman whose presence brought comfort and steadiness to those who knew her. Mary Ann is survived by her loving husband of 25 years, Jason McParland, and many family and friends. Visiting hours will take place Monday, today, April 6th, from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Doan Beal and Ames at 160 West Main Street in Hyannis. A funeral mass will be celebrated at 11 a.m. on Tuesday, tomorrow, April 7th, at St. Francis Xavier Parish, 347 South Street in Hyannis. The third obituary is of Jacqueline A. Colella of Lovell. Jacqueline A. Colella passed away peacefully at Stevens Memorial Hospital with her family by her side on March 30th, 2026. Jackie, as she liked to be called, was born in Boston in 1946. A mother of 4 boys and grandmother of 4 grandchildren, she was a woman of multiple talents. A dance instructor, choreographer, retail store manager, theater board member, actress, and racing sailor were some of her pastimes. She operated her own dance studio for 18 years, teaching ballet, tap, and jazz dancing to all ages. She and her husband operated a bed and breakfast in Falmouth for many years for tourists and travelers going to Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. Associated with the Falmouth Theater Guild for 22 years, Jackie danced, sang, choreographed, and directed many musical shows. She leaves behind her husband of 59 years, Tom, and many family and friends. There are no services planned, but a celebration of her life will be held in May or June. Arrangements are under the care of Wood Funeral Home, 9 Warren Street in Freiburg, Maine. And that concludes the obituaries and death notices that are listed in today's Cape Cod Times. We've completed the local news in the front of the paper. We'll move to the front of the paper for the national and international news. Analysis: private credit sector under stress. AI disruption and falling returns raise default risk, by Vidya Ranganathan of Reuters in London. Some investors think private credit is a tempest in a teapot. Others think it's about to spark a new financial crisis. Depending on the time horizon, both sets of views about the esoteric sector may be right. Signs of trouble in the obscure world of private lending, which had soared in popularity with companies looking for quick, bespoke debt and investors seeking high returns, have been brewing since the middle of 2025. The pace at which investors are demanding money back from some of the private credit funds, known as BDCs, business development companies, has accelerated this year on worries about competition, falling returns, and fears artificial intelligence will upend software businesses that are financed by them. Blue Owl Capital was the latest BDC to report it recently received a historic level of redemption requests and was limiting withdrawals, which it's allowed to do. Other big players such as Ares Management, Apollo Global, Blackstone, KKR, and private credit arms of banks such as Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, and Goldman Sachs have also capped redemptions. Most have signaled the redemptions showed the private credit industry was going through a period of recalibration rather than a crisis. Still, other signs of stress have emerged. BDCs are getting hit with higher rates on their bank borrowings, even as the historically high double-digit returns they make on private lending shrink. You're going to have credit cycles, you're going to have losses, you're going to have some markdowns. I mean, they're not lending at 5% for a reason, right? Said John Giordano, managing director of New York-based Seaport Global Holdings. Giordano doesn't believe risks are systemic, pointing to how BDCs have low leverage, they hold senior debt, or they're involved through equity holdings in the management of their companies. He also cited how well capitalized the banking sector is. Private lending bloomed after the 2008 financial crisis, becoming the alternative to bank finance for private equity firms seeking to acquire medium-sized businesses via long-term loans with simpler covenants and high returns. Data on exact exposures, valuations, and losses at BDCs remain sequestered, given their private deals, but they collectively hold more than $500 billion of private assets. The private credit industry, the Alternative Investment Management Association estimates at $3.5 trillion, is big enough to be consequential for financial markets. Share price of some of the publicly listed BDCs have fallen sharply this year. They're trading at a roughly 20% discount to their net asset values. Shares of U.S. software services firms, the sector most closely linked to private credit, have also fallen by a fifth this year. Rory Dowie, equity portfolio manager at Marlborough in London, said his firm has cut exposure to some of these asset managers and even shed holdings in Swiss private equity firm Partners Group, whose chair, Stefan Meister, said in March that default rates in private credit could double over the next few years owing to AI-driven economic disruption. Dowie says the symbiotic relationship to AI financing between public and private markets could result in a snowball effect. It's hard to say what's going to crack first, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy whereby you could get a bigger, more systemic issue occurring. Javier Corominas, director of global macro strategy at Oxford Economics, recently said the market's already in the early stages of a rolling crisis in private credit, based on estimates that 25 to 35% of these portfolios are subject to AI disruption risk. We are still at the beginning of discovering the issues, and it might not happen tomorrow. It might happen in 3 months or 6 months, said London-based Alberto Gallo, Chief Investment Officer at Andromeda Capital Management. You have this box where you have 100 companies, but you know that 10 of them are dead cats. Until you open the box, they're still alive. That's basically what they've created. Corominas said total bank lending to BDCs is modest and manageable, but the bigger worry is private credit holdings among U.S. life and annuity insurers. Those holdings have more than doubled over the past decade. Private credit accounts for around 35% of total U.S. insurer investments, close to a quarter of UK insurer assets, he said. More worryingly, insurers affiliated with private equity firms hold an estimated $1 trillion in assets acquired through these relationships, and the exposure to the private credit losses will fall disproportionately on U.S. pension funds and retail savers who have purchased life annuities from these insurers, he said. Should private credit losses erode insurer solvency, the resulting contagion would not resemble the bank-run dynamics of 2008, but would instead manifest at a slow-grinding erosion of retirement security. Harder to detect in real time and significantly more difficult to reverse, Corominas wrote. Andromeda's Gallo said he wouldn't dismiss the private credit woes as non-systemic risk simply by comparing it with the 2008 subprime crisis, which was driven by extended housing leverage through what was termed collateralized debt obligations. This is a different animal with different contagion channels, he said, referring to how leverage is pumped up in later stages in private credit by insurers. In the subprime crisis, contagion was through banks, and there was proper valuation of assets. But this time it's through insurance companies with no mark to market and more default risk, he said. Regulators always fight the last crisis, and here you have the opposite, the mirror image of the last crisis, he said. In a story that let many Americans breathe easier yesterday, military rescues airman whose jet was shot down. Trump issues more threats against Iran, by Catherine Palmer. President Donald Trump took to social media on April 5th to applaud the U.S. military's rescue of the second airman, whose fighter jet was shot down over Iran, and to issue an expletive-laden threat against the Middle Eastern nation to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. After extending the deadline on his ultimatum that Iran cease its effective blockade on ships passing through the oil route, the president said the regime now has until April 7th to meet his demands, threatening strikes on critical Iranian infrastructure. Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it, Trump wrote in the April 5th post on Truth Social. Open the expletive deleted strait, you crazy expletive deleted, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. The president signed off his message to the country, Praise be to Allah. The United States and Israel have intensified pressure on Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz, which usually carries about a fifth of global oil and liquefied natural gas, or face attacks on energy facilities. Meanwhile, China is willing to continue to cooperate with Russia at the UN Security Council and could make efforts to cool down the Middle East situation, Foreign Minister Wang Yi told his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in a phone call, state agency Xinhua reported on April 5th. Wang said the fundamental way to resolve navigation issues in the Strait of Hormuz is to achieve a ceasefire as soon as possible, adding that China has always advocated political settlement of hotspot issues through dialogue and negotiation. The foreign minister's call came ahead of an upcoming UN Security Council vote on Bahraini resolution to protect commercial shipping in and around the Strait of Hormuz. The airman was seriously wounded. The second service member rescued by U.S. Special Ops forces who had spent 2 days inside Iranian territory is seriously wounded, Trump said on April 5th. On April 3rd, an F-15E fighter went down over Iran, prompting a U.S. rescue mission, which quickly recovered one crew member, the pilot, but another from the fighter aircraft had remained missing. In the Truth Social post early on April 5th, the president described an intense search and rescue operation that led to the crew member being found safe. This brave warrior was behind enemy lines in the treacherous mountains of Iran, being hunted down by our enemies who were getting closer and closer by the hour, but was never truly alone, Trump said. The second member of the fighter jet's two-man crew sustained injuries, but he'll be just fine, Trump said, describing the crew member as a highly respected colonel. Trump said dozens of U.S. aircraft armed with the most lethal weapons were involved in the mission, and he said the U.S. military monitored the location of the missing crew member 24 hours a day as they planned his rescue. The president noted the rescue of another U.S. pilot yesterday, which he said had not been officially confirmed because military officials didn't want to jeopardize a second rescue mission. The timing of that rescue was unclear, as were details about the pilot or their aircraft. This is the first time in military memory that 2 U.S. pilots have been rescued separately deep in enemy territory, Trump said in the Post. The New York Times and CBS News reported that an A-10 Warthog plane that was part of the search and rescue mission was fired on by Iranian forces, and the pilot ejected over the Persian Gulf but was rescued. In a post on Truth Social, the president said he'll hold a news conference from the Oval Office with the U.S. military at 1 p.m. Eastern Time today, April 6th. And with that, we've come to the end of our reading of the Cape Cod Times. Not much in it today, so we do a half-hour reading on Mondays when there's very, very little news in it. This is your reader, Eric, saying be well, be safe, look after each other, and remember our veterans, especially those we've lost recently. Bye for now.